Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Today is Tuesday, 10th of March, and welcome to another exciting episode of Pep Talks in the Morning. My name is Felicia Hola, your co-host on a Tuesday and a Thursday. On this morning, I am joined by the none other than our beautiful, our intelligent Michelle Davis, our deputy party organizer. Michelle.
Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Felicia, for having me this morning. Such a pleasure.
Michelle, no thanks necessary. I have been gunning to have you on this show since I found out that I was going to have to switch up my co-host. And I remember telling you last week, after our first interview that we did together last year on January the 31st,
yes.
2019?
Yes, it was last year. Correct.
I said I had to be on an interview slash co-hosting panel with you again, and I'm very much looking forward to today's show.
So am I.
How was the commute? As you know, Michelle, some point 14.
Well, actually coming from Cedros, so I had quite a drive this morning. And, under the present circumstances of what we are facing in Trinidad, it was quite enlightening. I was a bit more fearful in terms of coming up in the morning, whereas, probably a decade ago, it would not have bothered me. Yeah. So it just shows you just the climate of the country has really changed how we look at everything and how we feel. On a day-to-day basis.
It really does.
Yes.
What time did you have to leave to get up?
Well, I got up at the ungodly hour of 2:45.
Oh my God.
Right. So a little before that, and I left at 3:15 to ensure I was here on time.
And you got here?
Yes, at 5 o'clock.
Nice. Well, Michelle and I have actually been preparing for this show since last week, Friday, when she confirmed that she was coming on. And so many things have happened since then.
Yes, correct.
The number one news breaking story, which a couple of our local TV stations broke yesterday, which is the looming or the threat of a global recession that is about to hit not just Trinidad, but the entire world. Okay. And this is due in two parts, the coronavirus, which has stimulated a travel panic across the globe, which is trickling down and affecting other economies, as well as an oil price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia. Now, the last time we saw a price war, Trinidad and Tobago experienced the brunt, at least a very hard brunt of it.
Yes.
And what we're looking at right now with that double whammy, coronavirus and the oil price war, looks very,
very gloomy.
Very gloomy and very concerning for us as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, particularly when we are not even sure if we are out of our own recession.
Correct, and I mean it just further clarifies what we've been speaking about with the Progressive Empowerment Party in terms of diversification, because now we see ourselves in a spot of, as you said, a global crisis. So you just take the coronavirus, and that alone can impact food importation. And we have an 800 million U.S. food importation. So suppose this virus continues to spread. What is our state of feeding our country?
Michelle, last week Saturday in our PEP offices, a farmer came to check us, a renowned, well-known farmer. He saw our program with Riyadh Mohammed when he called in 2 weeks ago when Anthony and I co-hosted. And he came in to speak to us, to offer his help. And that's what people do. They see the Progressive Empowerment Party and they see that ray of hope. They hear us talking some of the simplest solutions. And when we had Riyadh on, Riyadh was actually explaining to us just some of the basic problems in terms of farming in this country. And something as food consumption patterns that we have been doing for the past how much ever years, we still can't yet set that for the farmers. So we can't tell farmers, well, you know what, to avoid a surplus of tomatoes, we have 1,000 farmers, 200 alone do tomatoes, 200 do celery, 200 do garlic. We have not yet established that. So when tomato season comes around, you find 1,000 farmers doing tomatoes, and it goes to the market, there's a glut, and prices unfortunately have to fall. And the farmers are impacted. So because of that, of course, they don't want to be involved in agriculture because it's frustrating for them.
But of course.
And he was explaining to me, this farmer who came in, he's telling me that we import simple things like garlic.
Correct. Yes, we
Garlic.
do. And we see that in our everyday grocery shopping, don't we? We see that everyday US. You see the labels.
Yeah.
You see and you wonder to yourself, why is this not grown here? Why is this not grown locally?
Why is it not tilapia? There
Right.
are tilapia farms in this country that, should the government choose to subsidize, it would be cheaper. And he's explaining this to me. It would be
Correct.
cheaper than us importing from China, which, by the way, we can no longer do because of this outbreak of the coronavirus. So exactly what you said, $800 million, which is US dollars, which is,
US.
it is crazy
Crazy.
to me to conceive that we spend so much money on importing food. And I think we need to get Trinidad and Tobago to understand this, because they hear importing food and they think, okay, well, maybe it's the cereals and the expensive stuff and
No, it's
No,
it's
it's
lettuce, it's
basic.
cucumber, it's vegetables, it's fruit, it's
that can be grown
local
here.
stuff that can be grown here. We see it being done in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So Philip always mentions the simple avocado, zabuca as we call it here.
Yeah.
And you see Mexico making 1 billion US, literally a tenth of our budget in avocados alone.
Yeah.
Right? Why don't we use this agriculture as an extension, not of only as food supply, but jobs? Right? Because there's agro-processing and so forth. But we're not thinking progressive as a country.
We're not.
We're right now, Facebook is streaming in terms of yams. I think we're going to import yams from Ghana. That was our recent Prime Minister's trip. Of all things, as a result, yams.
I saw Shari, our party organizer, post a man from Tobago is talking about getting yams from Ghana, and I'm thinking, we can't do yams here.
That's what I thought. So I thought to myself this morning when I read it, I said, well, do we not have the climate, what is not conducive for that not to grow here?
Exactly.
But you and I know, we all grew up on that.
Yep.
We all grew up on provision. So what are we going to Ghana to import? Of all the things, what is this yam going to do to Trinidad and Tobago? Is this going to help us with our grocery bill? Is this going to help us with the crises we are facing right now?
Mm-hmm.
Of all the things to address, we are now adding to the 800 million US importation bill, because Ghana is not going to import that free.
Exactly.
So what are we thinking? Again, this is an additional expense for the country.
But it's weird, not weird, but it's ironic, the timing of him trying to introduce this new bill, or add on to our $800 million, right when this announcement was made that food prices are food is going to be harder to get. And the funny thing is, Philip has been talking about this for a while, and I mean, it's not something that you want to come through. You don't want to experience a global recession. I thankfully was not around at the last global recession, but I did feel the dip in the economy in the United States
Correct.
back in the early 2000s, and I felt the impact on Trinidad and Tobago, where we, as a result, were impacted. This is not the entire world that we're talking about, and we import so many things, and we have not yet moved towards food sustainability. We're actually talking about importing more. So
Right.
what is going to be our situation should this recession actually take place? How are we going to basically feed ourselves?
And what we're not hearing from Felicia, we're not hearing from the Minister of Agriculture in terms of what is the plan. What we're not hearing plans to back up the contingency plans. So we have a global crisis, which you see it all over Facebook. Trinidad, we're kind of taking it very lightly because
Yeah.
we do not have any defined cases. But in terms of food, We are already, as a nation, our food and grocery prices are so astronomical. And I have spoken to you, I've written on this. I mean, when you go to the US and you see a entire tin of strawberries for 1 US,
Yeah.
and the entire, basket here sells for the same 1 US is 50 TT. You wonder, how does the average person survive? You wonder, and we're still, I mean, and we had an oil price dip in the 80s, and we knew that the global impact. We know the global impact, and we still did not learn from the 1980s.
What have we done to diversify the economy
Correct.
between then and now?
Correct.
In fact, we've actually become
More
more
dependent.
dependent and more reliant on importing. And the thing is, it's not even a faraway fact anymore. The farmer, he was explaining to me on Saturday, you are literally being, well, not you're literally being told, certain products you cannot get out of China anymore because of the coronavirus.
Correct.
And the thing is, the coronavirus is now impacting travel. And because it's impacting travel, fuel prices are going down. And fuel prices going down means the price of oil is also being impacted. So we
Correct.
have that price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia.
Correct.
And we have the coronavirus. And it's almost like a super combo, just meant to say, you know
Correct.
what? World, take this and try to recover from it. But go ahead.
Right. It's a super combo, because we have not learned. We went through the oil decline in the 80s. We knew from then that we should diversify our economy, not become so dependent as an oil-rich nation. Right? So we got out of it. But now you have a situation where literally yesterday gas prices plummeted almost 30%.
Yeah.
So to the average person that is not understanding that, take your average income plummeting 30% and put it into perspective that we no longer have that money that we were dependent on.
Yes.
So now our budget is budgeted at $60 a barrel. I was reading that yesterday.
Yes.
It is now at under 30 as of yesterday or this morning. So what do we do?
And if you can see the trending figures, I think the producer should have put that up on the screen. As of yesterday, it is so dismal looking. The chart is literally downward slanting, and it's a huge drop. And that's just basically the world markets responding to what is now a crisis in terms of that price war and the coronavirus. And what they were saying, I was reading that usually when there's something new that you can't predict and you can't, especially when there are no vaccines available,
Right.
there tends to be that panic across the globe, and particularly now at a time where people are so conscious of spending, etc.
Yes.
They don't want to travel, and that is really impacting us. And we, as a oil-rich nation,
Right.
and a nation rich in terms of other resources, it is a shame that we have to be suffering as a result of it. There are some countries, they could see oil go down to $0 a barrel
And still survive.
and still survive.
Correct. But it is a reflection of what the progressive empowerment speaks of. We have been the victims of mismanagement for 57 years.
Yeah.
And if you look at history and you look at Trinidad in terms of how we've managed our economy, how we've somewhat blocked off the outside world and just kind of refused to go forward.
Yeah.
It's almost as though we stand in time, and then the reason I say that, because you speak to some people on the road, and the way they speak to you, it's as though they're stuck in time, as though they see no other options. This is what it is. No, this is what it was and could be, but we want it to be something else. We should not be in this situation. We have the Progressive Empowerment Party has spoke of diversifying the economy through so many ways, through maritime, through agriculture, through tourism, through manufacturing, outsourcing, labor-intensive jobs. But we see no action by governments past or present.
We're not. And The fact that this year our budget was a deficit budget,
Yes.
it is alarming to me when I'm seeing the figures, I'm seeing the charts, and I'm seeing that things are downward spiraling. But you just reminded me that our oil is right now, our budget is pegged at $60 a barrel, and that is already a deficit budget. What is going to be our case now that that has been slashed by more than half?
And they need to address that because we, as you indicated, we were already $7 billion deficit in this year's budget.
Yeah.
So now oil is projected to go down to, I read last night, probably $20 a barrel. So you're saying 60 to 20, quite a significant reduction. What is the plan? Because we were already operating at a deficit. And how does the average citizen relate to that? Well, let me tell you how you relate to that. That's when you don't get paid because the government, all these agencies and ministries and so forth, you are now going to struggle to get paid. Just to get paid because now we have
struggle more.
We struggle more, right? How is that going to impact you? Well, food prices, we might not even have the food that you're accustomed buying. How does the average citizen deal with that? Again, our Ministry of Works and Transport, our health ministry, they're not going to get funding to provide for the sick. So when the average citizen looks at these global topics, they have to relate it to themselves and see, how does this impact me? Well, it does impact you because your child might not be able to get medicine because the government can no longer import that due to this deficit. So we're now going to go probably, it's estimated, probably around from 7 billion, probably to, you're close, good to say, about over $20 billion deficit.
There's this term that Philip uses a lot, and particularly coming out of the carnival season, it is so applicable now. Trinidad and Tobago is literally whining on a sinking ship.
Yes.
Because while the carnival festivities was going on, and the feds and the all-inclusives, all of this was cooking up in the background. We had that threat from the coronavirus, actually. It was live and
Yes.
direct in carnival.
Right.
And the tensions between Russia and Saudi Arabia were building. And again, this country, I'm sure we have some of the top brilliant economists.
Yes.
I'm reading about
Yes.
some of them saying that, the government needs to address this by the end of the week. The government needed to address this 5 years ago.
Correct.
We needed to address this
10 years
20
ago,
years
20
ago.
years ago.
Because, we can no longer think in 5-year
No.
brackets.
Right.
And should the Progressive Empowerment Party government come into fruition, I would say that we're not here to talk what we can give you in 5 years. We're thinking posterity. We're thinking down the road. We're thinking your children and your children's children, some of whom are going to be paying the interest alone.
Correct.
And some of these loans that we've been taking as a country to just support and feed ourselves. Because look at $800 billion US.
Right.
In comparison to our measly budget of $60 billion.
Correct.
It's scary.
It is beyond scary because let's suppose, this coronavirus, it hasn't indicated it's stopping. So you have shipping that will be impacted by this. If it
Definitely.
continues to spread, you will have shipping be impacted. So you're again going to the average consumer. How does this impact me? Again, goods and services will not be available. And we continue not to learn from past mistakes. That is what is baffling about governance, both past and present. Have we not learned from past and present mistakes?
Obviously not, because here we are, again, still not even sure if we are out of our recession. Coleman Bud came and made a declaration last year that we are no longer in a recession, but do the people feel that? Do you dip into your pockets and feel like you have more spending power with your money? I went to the grocery a couple of weeks ago and I picked up basic items, Michelle.
Correct.
Basic
Correct.
food items. And every time an item went, I felt myself literally quivering because it's like, is this going to go past $1,000? But I mean basic items that will not last you past a week or two.
Correct. So, we talk about the average salary, average wages in Trinidad. Can you imagine, a single mother of two going to the grocery? I witnessed that the other day, and it was so heartbreaking because I was standing behind this mother, single mother of two, and of course you get to the the line, and the chocolates are there,
Yeah.
and the child is 3 or 4, and they reach out, and she had to tell her child that she could not afford it.
Yeah.
And these are things that as citizens we need to start questioning. Our buying power is being beyond destroyed right now in Trinidad. Our value, our dollar has no value, and when we, our exchange rate is astronomical compared to the rest of the Caribbean. We cannot get U.S. to buy the goods and the services that we wish to. So where are we going? Where is our buying power going? What is being learned? What are the solutions to fix what the average citizen is going through? I mean, it's crazy.
It is. Mangoes. Something as simple as mangoes,
Correct.
Michelle, that
Yes.
in Trinidad and Tobago you could actually find it growing year round. We have 4, 5, 6 mango seasons depending on which part of the country. Actually, the farmer telling me that down in Labrie
Yes.
has some of the best mango that you could ever
Yes.
find, and it has something to do with, or at least they are correlating it with the asphalt
Correct.
in the
Yes.
soil. But I mean, I went to the States. I'll never forget the first time I saw mango in the States. It's huge. Like, when I
Right.
say huge, and I'm like, ooh, that means that it must be great.
Right.
And you cut that thing open, and it's just bland and bland. And I'm
Correct.
like, this is nothing.
And we have it throwing on
We
the
have it
roads,
on the road,
wasting.
wasting away.
And you wonder. I mean, just take citrus. I remember, while I was a child, the coconut industry was very big in citrus in the 70s and 80s, and we have a lot of unused coconut estates down there. But the reason I mention it, because there's so much abundance of land
Yeah.
that can be used down there alone for agricultural development, and yet it has just been allowed to just literally waste away. The coconut industry down in Cedars is no longer. We have lands, as you've indicated, the mangoes in South are so much different, and again, Mexico grows mangoes and sells this in the groceries and makes millions. So again, we're trying to relate why we have not applied these progressive ideas, why we have failed, and why, the question is, why do we intentionally not diversify?
I don't know. We seem to want to sabotage our own selves. I mean, like we said, the world is talking global recession, and we're talking importing yams.
Right.
We seem to be not we, because I don't want to put myself in the brackets
Right,
of the people in
right.
charge of making policies and
Right.
decisions on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago. But Trinidad and Tobago, this is where we have to push back. I mean, that story about the yams was a big joke around
Correct.
Facebook yesterday, and everybody,
Right.
kya, yams,
Right.
importing yams. But the reality of the situation is, we have a government, we have a cabinet that seems to not, or be disconnected from the reality on the ground. They seem to be disconnected from the fact that as our food importation bill rises,
Correct.
our expenditure rises,
Correct.
and the way that this government is going about it in terms of basically trying to tax
Correct.
us into prosperity,
Correct.
it's not going to work, because you have people losing their jobs. The unemployment rate is rising.
Correct.
We can no longer just live on taxation alone. And the song that we have been singing for decades, which is diversify, 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 is no longer a song that we can just sing and,
Right.
just leave it to blow away. It is actually a reality now. It is on our doorstep, where we are facing a real threat across the globe.
But why, we saw that joke, but why Ghana for yams? Does South America not have that? Does a closer destination not have that? And again, I saw something yesterday that kind of just rang a bell. Ghana is one of the most corrupt nations in the
I
world.
was waiting for you to say that because I actually have an article on that about nepotism being deeply rooted in these African nations.
Correct.
And it's so weird that we seem to be making friends with all the wrong people.
Right. I think one of our colleagues or Peppers put, why aren't we aligning with the Hollands, the Netherlands, Denmark, progressive countries? Luxembourg just announced free transportation for their entire country. Why are we not aligning? Why are we aligning to a country that is known for corruption?
Exactly.
We are aligning to a continent that is known for corruption. And again, why did we have to go that far? If yams is a requirement,
yes,
why did we have to go that far? We have South America, a few hours away in terms of transport. Why did we have to? And why yams? Is that all Ghana can offer us? And again, with the coronavirus, how do you intend to get the yams here? Because shipping is going to be impacted in the next several weeks. We are going to have to consider tighter health regulations in terms of this coronavirus and screening of food, screening of destinations and so forth. So we have to wonder why are we continuing with this corrupted pattern if those in office are saying they are not aligned with that? Why are we not seeking advice from progressive countries that can assist us in going forward?
I remember somebody explaining to me, a expat from, I believe, Europe. I can't remember the exact country, but he told someone who told me that for him, looking at Trinidad and Tobago, looking at how rich we are in terms of, well, not money right now, but in terms of natural resources, in terms of the human capital, because we have brilliant people in this country. Take a Trinbagonian out of Trinidad and Tobago and put them anywhere in the globe, and they blossom, they flourish, they succeed. All of the resources and the wealth of knowledge and human capital that we have, he said it hurts him to see just how we waste it away.
It's extremely sad, Felicia, and I lecture at our UE, and I told my class just this weekend that why when a Trinidadian goes abroad, they prosper, they flourish, they abide by laws. And when we're in our own country, we're fighting each other. No, that's not going to work in Trinidad. This is government thing. I teach thousands of people, thousands monthly. And, the government agency employees are the first to tell you that's not going to work. But yet, if you put that employee on a plane, got them to New York, and said you need to be at work at 8 o'clock, they would be at work. We have become our worst enemy. And I am a product of a family that migrated, and I grew up in a family that flourished in the United States. But it is because of, in that time, the education system in Trinidad was top notch. So my sister went to NAPS. My mother and uncle, they went to the top schools also. So that education foundation that they had allowed them in their transition to flourish in the United States. But here we are stifling our own people in terms of going forward.
We are, and we telling them that jobs like CPAP in 10 days in Europe, take that and hold that election time coming here, hold a $500, hold a jersey. But when that $500 runs out in a day, because it's not even covering groceries for a week, when that is done, when your t-shirt get old and bust up, when you have to look at the reality of the fact that you don't own your own home, you're renting to survive, your money, most of your money is going into rent and taxes and gas. When you look at the reality of what we live right now at Trinidad and Tobago, you would realize that we are poor. And when I say we are poor, we're not just poor in terms of resources, or not resources, sorry, in terms of money, but we're poor in terms of our thinking, in terms
Oh,
of
yes.
in terms
Yes.
of where we want to be, and
Yes.
it is
Yes.
it is so easy to change that mindset. And when I say it's so easy, you have to elect people who have a vision in mind, and not just a vision of a 5-year vision, or a vision of taxing people into prosperity, or a vision of importing yams, or a
Right.
vision of making friends with some of the most corrupt nations that you could ever deal with in terms of resources. I mean a vision to elevate Trinidad and Tobago, to give hope and opportunity to people who have never experienced it, because we're going to come later in the second half of the show to talk about Black Trinidad and Tobago in particular, and just how they have been basically beaten down and taken advantage of by the same people that they praise and they laud, which is this PNM government. And I say this PNM government without
Right.
fear of contradiction, because Salman Kudjo actually did a very hurtful
Yes,
article for
yes.
me to read as some as a young Black woman
Right.
myself. But I'm going to take a quick break and come back to that shortly. Stay tuned.
Good day, Trinidad and Tobago. I am Philip Edward Alexander, and I thought that we should have an actual, factual conversation about our situation and circumstances as a nation. In our brief 57-year history, we've moved from the third wealthiest nation in the Western world to broke. How broke? The Minister of Finance says he has difficulty paying public servants. How rich were we? After the United States and Canada, we were richer than Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Argentina, Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Bermuda, Bolivia, Brazil. We've been richer than the British Virgin Islands, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba. This Trinidad and Tobago was the third wealthiest nation in the Western world. Besides the United States of America and Canada, we were richer than Dominica, the Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador. We had more money than Grenada, Guatemala, Guyana, Haiti, Honduras, and Jamaica. We were richer than Montserrat, Netherlands Antilles, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, St. Kitts and Nevis. As the third wealthiest nation in the Western world, we were ahead of St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Suriname, Turks and Caicos, Uruguay, and Venezuela. Now, we're broke. In our brief 57-year history, we've gone from being wealthier than all of these countries to broke. How broke? Our Minister of Finance cannot find the money to finance our budgets. We're engaging in something called deficit financing, which means we're running the country on credit. We can't find the money to pay our public servants, and it's getting worse and worse by the day. So what happened in our brief 57 years to all that money? Where is our money? Disguised as projects and contracts, governments from Williams to Rowley have overseen the looting of this country. We've moved in 57 short years from being the third wealthiest nation in the Western world to being broke and in debt. We owe China, we owe the IDB, we owe the local banks, we must pay OY dilemmas, we owe everybody. We've moved from being the third wealthiest nation in the Western world after the United States and Canada to being broke and in debt. Where's our money? Why can't we account for simple accounting of our money? Why is it so difficult? There are companies in this world with more employees than we have people. Walmart has 2.3 million employees. McDonald's has 1.9 million employees. India Railways has 1.4 million. How do these companies manage their accounts and we can't manage ours? Some of these companies are far-flung all around the world. Why can't we, this dot in the sea, manage our accounts? Why can't the Auditor General, the Minister of Finance, the Central Bank Governor, and all of the above come to Trinidad and Tobago at the end of each 12-month cycle and say, our income was X, our expenditure was Y, leaving a net profit or loss of Z. And again, the question that this video wants to ask and wants to get you to ask is a simple one. We've had Eric Williams, George Chambers, Arthur Napoleon, Raymond Robinson, Patrick Manning, Basdeo Pandey, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, and now Keith Rowley. And the one common thread for all of those governments is we've lost money every single time. There is a rogues gallery of people who have been involved at the highest level of all of those governments. Political supporters of the two main sides, the Red Party and the Yellow Party, can shout expletives at each other and name names of red bandits and yellow bandits without seeing the irony that we are all losing every time. In 57 short years, we've gone from being the third wealthiest nation in the Western world to a land where nothing works. Blood runs in our streets like water. We argue about, was it 541 who died or 542? And instead of feeling sorrow and misery at our condition, we're arguing about which of the yellow side or the red side had more murders. We are an insane little nation. The question we need to be asking, regardless of which side of the political divide you sit on, 57 years later, if we were the third wealthiest nation in the Western Hemisphere, where's our money? I'm Philip Edward Alexander, and this video has been a little bit more than 3 minutes asking a very important question that you and every citizen of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, no matter where you find yourself in the world, need to be asking. 57 years later, where is our money?
We are back from our break, and we are still on this topic of a looming global recession because as it impacts Trinidad and Tobago, I think the population needs to understand just how serious this can get for us. And Michelle and I were speaking over the break about what it means in terms of us actually staying afloat, and she was mentioning our Heritage and Stabilization Fund. Michelle, you could hop in here because I think Trinidad and Tobago needs to hear what this means for us in terms of our spending and our savings right now.
Well, as you know, we have been dipping into the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. So in terms of what it should be and what it really is, I believe it's estimated it's at $6 billion right now. But over the past few decades, we have been dipping into it. Whereas the real purpose of it was to, in terms of this, in times of this, in times of recession, in times of global recession, I should say. So now we will find ourselves dipping further into that. And again, when is this recession, global recession, projected to end? And I wanted to mention, we only spoke about oil prices previously, but just the entire natural gas prices and methanol are again part of our income.
Yes.
So those two have experienced a decline also because they're based off the oil.
Based on
right.
oil and gas.
So every little component of our income has now been reduced significantly. So the question to those in government right now is, are we dipping into the stabilization fund? How much are we dipping? And what is going to be the process to build it back up?
Very good question. Seeing as rather than diversifying and finding new streams of income, we're actually importing and finding more ways to borrow and spend, which is leading us into our next topic, which is government spending and expenditure. And we started, believe Lima and I, or was it Akil and I? Akil and I last week, we started talking about government expenditure because when you look at it, we have taken quite a number of loans in the past couple of years.
Yes, we have. The total US $800 million.
Our heritage and stabilization fund
Right.
is at what right now?
Right,
6. We
right.
can't even cover.
Right.
We can't even cover 2% of that loan right now.
So no, let me quote it. I think I got it. It's TT $21.7 billion. TT 21, but I was confusing it with the
800
import.
million,
Right.
yeah.
So TT $21.7 billion. A third of our yearly budget is now has been taken in loans in the past less than probably say 3 years. And currently loans are being taken in an election year, which leads me to question why are loans being taken in an election year where the accountability will be minimal? And where is this money going? Where is the average citizen seeing $21.7 billion being spent in Trinidad?
If I'm not mistaken, some of these loans were actually taken to supposedly stimulate certain areas in our
Right.
economy. So
Right.
I believe we took a $100 million loan or something to that.
Correct.
$221 million to boost tourism.
Correct. And we took US $100 million. US 100. So these figures are really high for WASA alone. We took $80 million for climate change. We took $200 million for tourism, 1.3 for the Tobago airport. We took 1.4 billion US for petroleum holdings. We took 104 US million from China, and we took 800, that's where I got it from, 800 million US for road rehabilitation. I knew I saw that. Right.
I want to touch on two of those.
Right.
One being WASA and one being the roads.
Correct.
Because those are two things that as Trinbagonians do work.
Correct.
When
And-
that song Nothing to Work, sung by Philip.
Correct.
When I think Nothing to Work, is those two immediately
Correct.
come to mind. We don't get water.
Right.
And our roads are absolutely dismal. I hate to drive on a road that I'm accustomed to.
Yes.
When I say I'm accustomed to, I know by heart, by road, which potholes to duck and when
Correct.
and where and
Correct.
how to maneuver. And a new one appears out of nowhere, and my car goes on into that.
Correct.
Feel it in my soul.
You feel it in your heart. Imagine me coming this morning from Cedros, pothole heaven, right? Because south is pothole heaven.
Yes.
Coming all the way to San Fernando. So my biggest fear was hitting a pothole. Can you imagine that? Driving up here, hitting a pothole, but thinking I get a flat, I'm stuck in the middle of nowhere. That was what was plaguing me this morning.
Yes.
Hitting a pothole at 3:30 in the morning.
And that might sound to some people like something to laugh at and giggle at, but it is so real.
Real.
Because there have been potholes that I went down in, Michelle, and I just felt my
I
whole
felt
car just literally jump out of alignment. And you're immediately thinking, oh Lord,
Right.
money to spend,
Correct.
bus tires, bent rims. And these are things that as Trinbagonians, they don't look forward to because it means even less
Less
money to
money.
spend in the groceries that are already prices are already too expensive. And again, going back to the fact that we're taking loans to fix these things in a country that works with a country that had a progressive and a thinking government, and a government that you can believe and put faith in would take that $100 million and actually inject it into bringing our water system up to par. I have to question, Will or was this done? Because when was this loan taken?
I don't have the year, but that
Not
is
the
just
year.
in the past 4 years, literally, this administration has taken these amount of loans.
I would really much like to know what that money was supposed to do in terms of, it's very vague to say that you're taking a $100 million loan for WASA. That can mean many things.
Correct.
Was it to upgrade the piping system? Was it to add on to the network? Because we still have areas in Trinidad and Tobago, and you know this, Michelle. You've
Correct.
done
Yes.
tons of walkabouts
Yes.
and hear people complain that they still
Still
don't have water.
But let's just suppose we take the basics of what a loan should be for. We would think, right,
Mm-hmm.
would be to improve the process of delivery to benefit the
distribution.
citizens, right, to water distribution. Let's just say infrastructure for WASA or for the the roads and so forth. But have we seen the benefit of that? No. We do not see any evidence, major evidence, let's say that, major evidence of where our money goes in Trinidad. We see loans being taken, we see newspaper articles indicating loans have been taken and what it's for, but does the average citizen benefit from that? I am coming up to Port of Spain almost every day, and there has been no road works from Cedrus through Orapooch. Orapooch just started because that roundabout they're trying to finish that. But from Orapooch down, there has been no evidence of any road works until recently coming down. And it's just probably just a little bit. So where is our money going? And why are we taking loans? And where is the money allocated in the budgets being spent? So we're talking, this is on top of our budget, which already each ministry is allotted billions.
Yes. I was mentioning on the program last week where we discussed Christopher Phillips. We spend an average, and this is mind blowing to me because I was explaining, the fact that to some Trinidadians, Tobagoans, we hear billion, and some can't differentiate between billion
Right.
and million. Our health budget is about $6 billion a year, which is an average of $17 million a day that we spend in healthcare.
Right.
$17 million a day. Michelle, the president's cottage was renovated for
Right.
$17 million a day. I mean, a price that I'm still not
Correct.
convinced was worth the money.
Correct.
But $17 million a day is money that some people never see in a lifetime. It's the cost of homes, plural.
Plurals.
A $1.5 million
Mhm.
home, you can buy that almost 10 times
Correct.
with a loan like that, and not a loan like that. Sorry, with the money that
No.
we are spending, and it is absolutely crazy to me to just imagine where our money is going, because you're seeing, like you say, you're seeing these loans coming out and you're seeing budgets being
Yes.
allocated, yet you're still hearing people complaining that I haven't had salaries paid. And then you look at the reflection of what we're getting for it for $17 million a day in healthcare,
Right.
and you still can't get a bed. It is
in
mind-boggling.
the hospital.
It is mind-boggling.
You have schools closing down because the infrastructure is so unsafe for the children. But yet, for example, the Ministry of Education, again, a $6 billion, $5 billion budget. And there is furniture. We have witnessed that. We have held some meetings in schools that are so dilapidated that personally we know the furniture is from the 1970s or
Yes.
before. We know that.
termites.
Termites.
Some kids complain about that.
Infrastructure, where is the money being spent? And until citizens start to ask pertinent questions, these are not questions that the Progressive Empowerment Party needs to tell. Your children are experiencing this. The road, when you drive the road every day, as you said, and there's a new pothole, instead of the road being paved, you then ask yourself, where is this money going? When you have to buy a new tire every few months, costing $500, $400, and taking from your disposable income, this is where you start to question the government. You start to question those that you elected and ask, where is the money going? Where are our taxpayers' dollars going? We see no evidence. We refurbished a stadium for some astronomical amount of money. Did that stadium benefit the average citizen of Trinidad and Tobago?
Oh, well, we can throw fats there now. We can have all inclusives in the stadium. Or now that we might be facing a recession, we can all gather in the stadium and pray the kumbaya. I don't know, but I mean, it's a joke, but the reality of it is we are spending, you're seeing money being spent, and you're also seeing it being spent in areas that are so unnecessary.
Necessary.
And I say unnecessary because with the threat of a global recession right now, $441 million on renovating a red house seems a little bit more frugal than it would have seemed 4 months ago when you were clapping and applauding it. It
Correct,
would.
correct.
Because now you're thinking, maybe that wasn't as important right now. We're not going to eat the red house. We're not going
Correct.
to, when bills are looming, when we have to pay back all of these loans that we're taking and borrowing from, the red house is not going to save us. There's nothing that we can do with it. The president's house, all of these things that are supposed to bring national pride. National pride means nothing on an empty stomach.
On an empty stomach. And I saw a quote from someone on Facebook basically saying, the empty stomach leads to anger. And then you relate it to the crime that this country is facing. Everything is interrelated.
It
and
is.
until we citizens start to realize that, spending these astronomical figures on renovation, when the average citizen is still struggling with water.
Yes.
We are not, no district or constituency in Trinidad and Tobago is getting water 24/7. None. So why is that not the priority? Why are roads not the priority? Speaking for the citizens south that drive up north, you take a hit on your car.
You do.
You take a hit. Your car is being battered, literally, beaten to, and you take it. Why isn't that the priority? Why isn't the priority getting the cost of food down in this country where the average family can have more disposable income? When families have more disposable income, it benefits the entire economy.
It does.
Why don't we know the basics economy 101 in this country? Why do we continue to manage as though we are a colonial institute that is not moved past the 60s?
We do that because, or we operate like that because we have people who still have not understand their responsibility and the role of government. And our responsibility is to hold the government accountable. Someone came on a post that I had last week and said, the reason why there's no accountability is because it's not written into the Constitution. And I agreed in part because we don't have laws like the right of recall to fire non-performing MPs and stuff like that. I read an article, that same article that we're going to discuss in a little bit from Selwyn Cujo, that residents of Port of Spain East haven't seen their MPs since election. And yes, we can't do that, but at the end of the day, we have 1.4 million people who have a voice. 1.4 million of us who can speak out against the nonsense that we're seeing happening right now. We are the ones right now, until the laws are written into our constitution, until there are amendments, until we have the right to say you're not working, get out, we have to continue to hold them accountable. And it can't just be lip service or what my MP not doing it. No, we have to talk and bring it up and highlight it and keep pressing until something is done. And if that's something that has to be done, means turning up on election day
Correct.
and telling your past MP or the incumbent, no thank you.
Correct.
That's what we have to do, because as of right now, we're seeing voting race and voting party and voting who my mother and they told me I should vote for has not helped us. It has not.
And the question is, do citizens feel they have the right to hold someone accountable? Because we hold those in power in such high regard.
We do.
So that hence the reason we do not question.
Yes.
Well, what are you doing? Where is the money going? Well, they're in power and so forth. Why does accountability a first world practice have to be written into the Constitution? Why, as with other countries, have we not progressed to that thinking where those elected, whether you're not elected, let's say you and I go to an organization, are we not held accountable?
We are.
We are. When our manager gives us a task to do, we should be held accountable. But we don't practice accountability in Trinidad because somehow we feel those in charge are entitled, that they should not be questioned.
And it's that colonial thinking that you
Correct.
mentioned, Michelle. I mean, decades, centuries after slavery, we're still thinking in that massa kind of way, and people would get offended by that. But somebody, actually my uncle, and if you're watching this show this morning, I'm going to use you as an example. You know, he said, I like your party and I like your policies, but I don't like your political leader because he called the prime minister jackass, and there are a lot of people, not a lot, because
Yes.
I realizing more and more people calling him a
Referring to
jackass
the same
now,
thing,
whether
right.
directly or indirectly.
Correct.
And he said, as much as he does this and he does that, you have to have respect for those in power. And I'm like, I think that is exactly what led to slavery going on
Correct.
so long. This concept that those in charge need to be revered and
Yes,
respected, and they
yes.
don't push back.
Yes.
And I told him, I said plainly, I was like, I was brought up, my mommy taught me please and thank you and excuse me and all of the polite words to use, especially for people in charge and older than you and in
Right.
authority. But I absolutely cannot have respect for somebody who does not respect me. And when I say who does not respect me, the people in charge of this country
Yes.
right now, those who have been in charge, who have been at the helm to steer the ship of Trinidad and Tobago, they clearly, there's no indication that they have been putting the nation first. There's no indication that they have been thinking about the poor man down in the village behind
Yes.
God back who can't access
Yes.
water, who
Yes.
doesn't have a road network to get around because that's
Correct.
behind God back. And you know what? Let's just pave the main roads to look like we're doing
Correct.
something. I
Correct.
can't have respect for those people. And it doesn't mean I'm going to walk around flipping off
Right,
everybody.
right.
But I'm not going to stand here and not call you out for what you are. And you're a jackass. You have to be, because either this is intentional or you're just
Right.
plain incompetent. And either way, you're clearly not deserving of the job, and you're not deserving of my respect or those of the citizens who put you there.
And are we, Felicia, as citizens, being shown respect?
Exactly.
Because you publish, let's just take the US $800 million loan for roads and infrastructure. But we're not seeing that. So clearly you are taking us for fools.
Exactly.
Clearly you are because we are not seeing any sign of major works. We have the ongoing highway that has been through, it's going through 2 administrations now, and we see it, and it's an election ploy. They're hurrying up down south to finish it, to say that they finished it. But where, are you showing us respect as citizens? Are you showing us accountability? Are you showing us transparency in what you are doing with the money that in the long run the citizens are paying? And the average citizen needs to realize that we, the taxpayers, are paying these loans. And as we further decrease and refuse to diversify, refuse to find means of income, they are going to tax us into a hole as a citizen. And we are feeling it. I wrote an article when I spoke to you last week about, the driving violations. Everything is revenue generating, but who is taking the hit? The average citizen.
We're going to take a break with that and come back to talk a little bit more about the average citizen and just how politics has really impacted, and not just impacted, but literally demoralized and run our nation into the ground. We will be right back.
Antel is Trinidad's most reliable and technically experienced ICT company, providers of quality structured cabling, Cat6 data fiber and power cables. We also stock cabling infrastructure basket-type cable trays for server rooms and data centers. Antel also installs and maintains video security systems including cameras, alarms and electronic entrance locks for businesses and residential properties. Call Antel 674-1406 or 783-9250.
Despite the security and convenience advantages offered, many have opted out of the formal banking sector and have chosen instead less traditional means of saving their money. Due in no small part to what some have termed rapacious and usurious fees and rates, the public find themselves in a position where deposits of funds in the banks lead to a net loss at the end of the year, making no sense to anyone at all. The traditional relationship is supposed to be one built on depositors' funds being made available to the banks, so that the banks could make those funds available through credit to small businesses to stimulate development and growth. This would have the effect of buoying the economy and creating jobs, a net win for everyone. But that is not what occurs right now. The absence of banking service regulations creates an environment where the banks could do as they pretty much damn well please, leading to where we are today, money warehousing. The Progressive Empowerment Party advocates for strong financial service regulations, including setting and determining banks' lending and deposit fees, so as to create an environment where the banks can continue to earn fantastic profits as they do right now, and also protect depositors from overzealous profiteering banks. Deposit fees, cash checking fees, over-the-counter fees, ATM fees, we're one step away from banks charging appearance fees. It is ridiculous, and someone has to speak about it. The public does not know who to turn to. The Financial Services Ombudsman seems to be a myth. The central bank governor and the Minister of Finance don't seem to understand whose responsibility it is to protect depositors and customers from ridiculous fees run amok. So the Progressive Empowerment Party will. We are engaging this conversation with the public, hoping to get the banks and those in government presently to do their jobs. If not, an election is around the corner. Vote the Progressive Empowerment Party into office, and we will ensure that while the banks are free to make all the profits they want, they will do so servicing and respecting the customers, paying interest on depositors' funds that they use to generate interest for themselves through lending credit, and not have to rely on advantageous fees, leaking funds from customers' accounts.
What do you call it when a bunch of companies collude to set prices, fix markets, close off competition, capture regulators, and bribe politicians?
Another issue contributing to this lack of respect and service is the closed-off nature of our financial services sector and the lack of real competition among the banks. The Progressive Empowerment Party also advocates for an open market where banking and financial services are concerned. We would create an environment that invites international competition to help bring new, vibrant stimulation into the economy, creating an environment where all banks now have to compete for depositors' funds, creating the environment that we're looking for. I am Philip Edward Alexander, and this has been 3 minutes to a better Trinidad and Tobago.
We're back from our break, and we're going to touch on the topic that I mentioned earlier about Black Trinidad and Tobago. And I stress on Black Trinidad and Tobago because We, at least our governments for the past 57 years, the majority of those, over 45 of those years, have been a PNM led government, and it has been, the country has been at the hands of black leaders in power. Yet, as this article is going to tell, the black community, particularly the communities in East Port of Spain, have not felt the benefits of having one like them in power, which is what we tend to say, because we tend to vote race in this country, and for that exchange you would think that you would help each other along, yet the exact opposite seems to have happened in the past 56 years. It's a bit lengthy, but it is definitely worth the read. And for those who would like to find this article, it's called Black Betrayal. It was written on March the 7th, 2020, by Selwyn Cujo. After my article appeared in the Express last Sunday, I received the following note. Good morning, Mr. Cujo. I have been reading your articles in the newspapers for a while, and I want to invite you to come and take a look at East Port of Spain, where I live. My name is Aaron St. John. I am 41 years old and was born in this city. It has not changed for all my life. It remains the same dirty, nasty, underdeveloped, unprotected, and it's only getting worse and more dangerous. Our lives are not improving, and a deep sadness covers every home and everyone in and around the city. I want to invite you and also the media to come and see what we have been dealing with for over 50 years. 50 years of neglect. Our grandparents and parents, some of them are already dead. They died of sadness, unhappiness, shame, and bitterness. Please come and see for yourself, and maybe they will listen to you. Or not, but at least you would have done a great deed for your people, the children of slaves. Selwyn goes on to say, I could not ignore Aaron's letter. I went to East Port of Spain to see things for myself. This is my modus operandi. The previous Sunday, I referred to a report I did on Torrip Trace Presbyterian School in 2005 about the callous racial manner in which some teachers there treated black students. I spent about 3 days documenting conditions there. Lennox Surgery Singh concluded that black professionals, black children, and black parents and I lied about the conditions there because the responsible Presbyterian Primary Schools Board of Education investigated and found no evidence of allegations. Other people tell the truth. Black people lie about their conditions. I met Aaron on Wednesday. He painted a bleak picture of the area. He believed PNM failed to take care of its own. Other residents shared his concerns. He remembers 2 photos in his grandmother's living room, Jesus Christ and Eric Williams. They were the twin leaders of his home. His grandmother kept a dried up Balize in her home. It was wasting away, but she never threw it away. She never missed voting in an election. He remembers, when time came to vote, she would rush down to the polling station even though she couldn't see very well. Such was her love for the PNM. Aaron believes his grandmother's devotion was never reciprocated. They, the members of parliament, never loved the people as the people loved the party. Our parents should have fired them a long time ago. Our downfall in tongue is that we believe in the PNM so much that we accepted being deceived by them. For years we have called evil good, but love has no color, no gender, no race, and the PNM does not show us love. He continued, we have 4 parliamentarians in Parliament, Fitzgerald Hines, Marlene MacDonald, Stuart Young, and Adrian Leons, but they do nothing for us. We don't see them. We have no political clout in the party. Our schools, Success Laventille Secondary, Southeast Port of Spain Secondary, and primary schools, Eastern Boys Government and Eastern Government Girls, are broken and underprotected. They are underdeveloped and underperforming. Aaron claims that the physical surroundings of these places leave much to be desired. He says, the stench of feces and urine around the schools, Southeast Port of Spain Secondary, makes it undesirable for educating the young minds of the area. The schools have nothing going on for them. Homeless people walk around smoking crack. This makes things look hopeless. The neglect disturbs Aaron greatly. He pulls out a Sunday Guardian article from his bag, which lists prominent men who came out of that area. They include Dr. Alvin Hilaire, Central Bank Governor, George Chambers, former Prime Minister, and Clinton Bernard, former Chief Justice. Errol Bush Holder, a long-standing member of the community, says, "It hurts my heart to see what's going on now. We can't walk up Nelson Street now because of the vagrants living in the river, and we might catch a disease. It's a shame to see how the place has become." This article reminds me of what he considers a lost Arcadia. I visited the area yesterday morning. I took a taxi to Duncan and Prince Streets, walked across Prince Street, turned on George Street, turned on Charlotte Street, and ended up in a Port of Spain secondary school. The stench on George and Cockton Streets was suffocating, but I persevered. The friendliness, cleanliness, and warmth within the school contrasted the offensive smelling surroundings. Inside the school, I spoke with Dean Roger Martin, whose commitment to the school and his pupils are boundless. Collins Watson, a maths teacher who offers his services freely to the children on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, said, "I come back to give something to the country and the school." Another English teacher was studiously at work. She attended to her students' needs assiduously. She preferred to remain nameless. I asked the dean what kind of assistance the school receives from its parliamentary representative. I was told, "We haven't seen Marlene in years. She has never come to this school and asked a question, even though her office is on Piccadilly Street." I also asked what kind of assistance the school receives from its past students or members of the black community. The answer was in the negative. Representing one's community faithfully or giving back seems to be a foreign concept to many of us. Fortunately, the people within the school had other ideas of what constituted service. I will speak of those challenges next week.
One word, sad. I mean, it literally almost brings tears to your eyes, because is this what we feel we deserve as people? Is this what our grandparents, what our parents taught us, that this is our boundary? And we know there's a history of generational voting, without questioning, without thought, without reason. We hear it every day as we walk the streets talking about the Progressive Empowerment Party. We are rejected just based on we are another party, because the diehards, our black communities, are so entrenched in voting by race, because they feel that's where they can identify. And we need to stop thinking that way. We need to stop thinking as a country. And as a country, we need to identify as Trinbagonians, not as black, not as Indian, not as Chinese. We are all from the same country. And until we realize that and stop placing our destiny on the color, skin color, we will get nowhere as a country. And we have evidenced that for 57 years.
Not line in that song from Tyron Hernandez, "Our vote will decide our destiny." I don't think there is a truer statement. And for the past 57, going on 58 years, we have been resigning ourselves to some of the worst in terms of service, in terms of public service, because we forget a lot of times. I was watching this cartoon on called Rick and Morty on Netflix yesterday. I really love that show, and he met the president of America, and he was trying to get a selfie with the president, and the president kept brushing him off, and he said, you are a public servant. I learned that you're basically my employee. And I mean, it was a joke.
Right.
But it's the reality.
Yeah.
We elect these people to work for us. It's the same as, think about voting as a hiring process.
Right.
You walk into the booth, you have your options in front of you, and you think, which one of these options is best suited to represent me, to work for me. That's what we do. We hire you to work for me. And we make a selection. And then that person, like we were saying earlier in the show, does not work for you.
Right.
And in terms of accountability, were this an organization, you would fire them. Next time you had an opportunity, you would fire them. But what we find is, like you were saying, we vote along racial lines, we vote along party lines, and in doing so, we hold on so much to our belief that, especially if it's a black man and I'm black, he will work for me and he'll do for me. But the reality is, and you look at it, the people benefiting when the PNM is in office is not the people who look like you. It's not the people who on the ground. I mean, look at East Port of Spain. Some people only experience East Port of Spain when they have to drive out of the city. But
Correct.
take a walk through Port of Spain like Selvin did. And I am from Belmont, so Charlotte Street and Duncan Street and
Right.
George Street and Nelson Street are streets that I have been on regularly. It's streets that I don't go on anymore because of the rising crime situation. I mean, there was a couple incidents outside of Southeast School last year because it's directly opposite what is known as a gang slash crime area, and there were some shooting incidents. Actually, a bullet went into the school and hit one of the teachers. I remember that incident, and there were incidents of violence outside of the school. And take a walk in these PNM strongholds, and you would see just how badly abused these people are, how hopeless they are. They feel that sense of hopelessness. And for me, as a young black woman growing up in these communities and seeing where my life could have taken a turn, I mean, literally from the education point, my life could have gone a complete 180, a complete different way. And I mean, my mom pushed me and she's like, study hard and go to a good school. But for those who can't go to a good school, those who have to go to the Southeast and the Eastern governments and the schools that are considered neglected and underperforming, like the article was saying, what becomes their reality outside of that? What becomes their reality when you're growing up in a situation where crime is literally on your doorstep? And if it's not on your doorstep, it's right outside of your school.
Right.
What becomes of those children? And you know what becomes of those children? They're the ones, some of them, because again, every time I say this, I never discount the fact that there are those who rise above their circumstances. But the reality is, for a huge percentage of these children, there's no hope, there's no opportunity, and you find yourselves resigned to a cycle that is perpetuated for the next generation, which is that sense of hopelessness, and you're still holding on to your balance, but there's no opportunity for you, no real opportunity.
But what is more disturbing, I mean, it's just the mindset of why we as black people don't believe we deserve better. That the mindset of, this is what I deserve, the mindset of not going to the voter election every 5 years and saying, I'm diehard for what? You're living in filth. You every time I pass Beetham, it brings such great sadness to my heart, because it's unbelievable a country of such wealth has that off a highway.
Yeah.
It is mind-blowing. But what is even more disturbing is when you speak to the black population and you try to present progressive ideas and progressive thought, and they're almost angered at you. We are an angry nation, hence the reason we have crime literally spiraling out of control, and it's mostly black youths. But the system has failed all around because it stems, like you said, it stems from home. So if the home environment is not encouraging, and then you go to the education system, which was so eloquently described in the article, the education system is failing you. And then you search social systems, you search social programs, the entire system is failing these children. You and I were fortunate. We had encouraging backgrounds.
Yes.
We had backgrounds that believed in us. But here it's just a matter of survival. There is a survival for food, as we
Yes.
spoke about. Can you imagine? I wrote an article saying, can you imagine waking up every morning and you don't know where your next meal is coming from? And you and I, as women, are in the car and we just came from the grocery and our hands are filled, and we might be the next victim because someone is hungry.
Yeah.
And this generational cycle of destroying our own. We again, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we do not need any party to tell us our reality. We are experiencing it. If you are from these strongholds, where have you got? Where has it progressed? What have you got? A t-shirt, $500. Is that your worth? And until we realize we are worth more than that, we deserve more than that, we can't go forward. And voting on race is getting us nowhere. It is getting us to a hate-filled country.
Yes.
That all we focus on is race. Everything is divided by race. But during Carnival, we're all jumping up and whining together. But the minute the Carnival ends, that's it. We've gone back to our racial tones. Where has that got you? Does the race give you a discount in the hospital? Does the race get you a discount at Massey? Does the race get you a better education? I mean, think. We are destroying our own selves. And that article it touches your heart.
It does.
Just the part of the stench, the smell of being around such filth. Can you imagine your mindset? Can you imagine a child's mindset of going to school, passing through that and seeing no hope? We deserve better. And we have to realize we have to come out of this cycle that is killing us as Black people.
We have to, and we also have to realize that, like you say, Michelle, this is it has to be broken by design, because this country has seen its fair share of wealth.
Yes.
And when I say wealth, oil booms, that money that we couldn't even think about, money we couldn't even count. And even to this day, as we're facing all of these threats about recession, and even when we were undergoing our recession, like I said, look at the people who were benefiting. Look at the people who still had money and could buy flashy cars and houses in the dozens. People who own basically our economy, and then compare that lifestyle to the people who put the governments there. Compare that lifestyle to the people who are responsible for voting and putting them. Then you have to realize, you have to agree, and you have to see that this is obviously deliberate. There's obviously a deliberate design to keep those behind, because an uneducated population, which is what we're fostering by putting children through situations and circumstances where they are not accessing a first-class education, because you're dividing the nation into the haves and the have-nots, those who can get prestige education and those who cannot. Every time I pass, and I passed there yesterday actually, every time I pass by Southeast Secondary School, I think two things. One, I'm really happy for those who rose above their circumstances and were able to do better, but I also just feel a sense of sadness, like you said, because I know that there are many of them who can't and could not rise above their circumstances. And I mean, the teachers who invest so much time and heart and love into what they do. I applaud you tremendously, but I also know that you need the backing of the government, of the Ministry of Education, to assist in raising the school and the
Correct.
entire community up from the impoverished state that it is. And walking out of your school and being a victim of crime is absolutely unheard of for me. Like,
Correct.
I cannot imagine what that must be like, living that lifestyle daily, or not just living that, but you're experiencing this at school, and then you go home
Right.
to wherever you live, and you are also at risk of being a victim there. That kind of environment, and we wonder why we're breeding criminals in this country.
Exactly, and we, and knowledge is power. My grandfather used to say that, right? Knowledge no one can take away from you.
No.
So why think about it? It's so deliberate, because why educate these communities?
Yeah.
Why? Because then they will have power.
Mm-hmm.
They will have control. They will start to think. They will start to think outside the box. So it is deliberate. We intentionally are holding down our own people, because think about it. How else would you get the vote? You have nothing else to go by. You don't have a track record of success. You don't have a progressive thinking. You don't have policies and procedures to take this country forward. You have kept this country stagnant
Yes.
for 57 years. We are stagnant. We are still a colony.
We
The
are.
way we think, the way we operate, the way we
Definitely.
view governance. So why they are deliberately not educating those populations? They are deliberately keeping those populations angry, because once you keep them angry, they have no time to think about anything else. They have no time to think outside the box. They're just thinking day to day. And you mentioned earlier that CPEP and URP program.
Mm-hmm.
If there's one thing that infuriates me in Trinidad, it's that program. I see women older than me in that program. And it breaks my heart to think this is where you've reached. This is where you think you deserve. This is minimum money that has got you nowhere. These programs are designed to keep you in poverty.
They are.
You will never save a dollar. But yet we're fighting, and I'm in URP and I'm in CPEP as Black people. What is that to be proud of? You are much more than this. You can be much more than this. But yet we're aiming for the minimum, because we think minimally in Trinidad.
We do.
We think we deserve minimum. We actually, during election time, think that 500 and that t-shirt is $1 million, without realizing long term, where is this government going to get me?
Yes.
And we need to start realizing that.
You said something earlier about an educated person is one who would not only realize they deserve better, but they would also be able to think for themselves and be able to challenge the system. And it just took me back, and we keep the theme of colonialism keeps coming up in this entire discussion, because it is what we
It
are. We
is,
are a
yes.
post-colonial / neo-colonial society. And back in days of slavery, an educated slave, or a slave that could read, was seen as a threat to the master. It was seen as, because from the time you can read,
Correct.
it means that you can think. And from the time you can think, you would realize, but hold on, is this how things are supposed to be? And that people of East Port of Spain, people, and I want to extend this, because it doesn't just extend to the Black
Correct.
communities. It has trickled and spilled over into our East Indian communities,
Yes.
and all just the general thinking of Trinbagonians, that we don't deserve better, but we do. We absolutely do deserve better. All of the nappers and the sappers and the Hyatts, all of these pretty things around us, this behind us here, looks so first world. That's not first world. First world is the value of the money in your pocket. First world is water in your pipes. First world is a secured community, because you and your children should not have to live in a crime-riddled area.
Correct.
where you feel unsafe. You shouldn't have to send your child to a school where they feel unsafe. And to the people of these communities, I'm speaking directly to you. You deserve so much better. And you deserve a government that is at least talking about your well-being in mind. And when I say talking about your well-being, not coming, like Michelle said, to just throw freebies around at elections. And I watched, it hurt me, Michelle, the last election that we had in the local government election. It hurt me to see money being spent on posters and music truck and wine and jam sessions. It hurt me because I knew that the day after elections, all of this money that was flowing through our community was going to evaporate. And all of the elation and the joy and the free rum was going to go, and the reality was going to settle that our community is no better off today than it was tomorrow. It's no better off today than it was 5 years ago. It's no better off today than it was 10, 20 years ago. And actually, it's getting worse. We're regressing. When I think about the development in Belmont, the only thing that I can think about is the awning that Stuart Young puts around the bar, the local bar, because you know what bars are to communities. It's the local watering hole. Is where you go and release your stress of living in this banana republic that we live in. But in terms of real sustainable development, I can't say what Belmont has gotten from Stuart Young, and I know you're going to come and throw out little handouts right now before elections, and I know that you rile up the people for local government elections and made them think that things were going to change. But we still pass the same rubbish on the street every morning. Crime is still an issue. Water is still an issue.
Exactly. It, you know, you mentioned something, and it does extend past the black communities, because if you look at the strongholds on both sides of the two political parties, they're the most impoverished.
Yes.
And they play on the race card. If you go, you know, Port of Spain East and you go Central, it's almost the same the same thinking. It's the same non-educated exposure. They feel they deserve minimal. They can't even explain why they are selecting the party. I had a man tell me, I said, you know, would you like to hear the policy? What policies you talking? Literally. And he said it, but I had to walk away because I said, wow, the power of lack of education. That, I mean, it you know, it was funny at the moment because the way he said it was so, what, you know, but the power of lack of education. And I grew up in a education system that encouraged you.
Yes.
You know, people ask me to this day, why am I comfortable with public speaking? I'm comfortable speaking, giving speeches, teaching, and so forth. Because at the tender age of first grade, which is 6 and 7 in the U.S., my teacher found that I had a talent to present. Because they encouraged you from 6 to 7, first year in school, you went to the front of the class, and my teacher saw something that I was, and then my family started investing in that and started encouraging me and I had that positive upbringing, right? And my family started from humble beginnings, so there's no reason, no one, Black, Indian, Chinese, should say they can't come out of their current situation, because they can. But it is all the mind. And until we realize we are deliberately being managed into the ground in terms of our mental thinking, our everything, financially we're being managed to the ground, mentally we're being managed to the ground, there's not going to be any change. We have to start thinking as a nation, stop voting race.
Stop voting race and stop voting party, because the Balizi and the Rising Sun have both died and set on us, and we are no better. We're going to take a quick break and come back and do the wrap up for the day. We will open the lines for calls if you want to make a call. The number is 347-4737. You can call us on WhatsApp if you like as well. But we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back.
Despite the security and convenience advantages offered, many have opted out of the formal banking sector and have chosen instead less traditional means of saving their money. due in no small part to what some have termed rapacious and usurious fees and rates, the public find themselves in a position where deposits of funds in the banks lead to a net loss at the end of the year, making no sense to anyone at all. The traditional relationship is supposed to be one built on depositors' funds being made available to the banks so that the banks could make those funds available through credit to small businesses to stimulate development and growth. This would have the effect of buoying the economy and creating jobs, a net win for everyone. But that is not what occurs right now. The absence of banking service regulations creates an environment where the banks could do as they pretty much damn well please, leading to where we are today, money warehousing. The Progressive Empowerment Party advocates for strong financial service regulations, including setting and determining banks' lending and deposit fees so as to create an environment where the banks can continue to earn fantastic profits as they do right now, and also protect depositors from overzealous profiteering banks. Deposit fees, cash checking fees, over-the-counter fees, ATM fees, we're one step away from banks charging appearance fees. It is ridiculous, and someone has to speak about it. The public does not know who to turn to. The Financial Services Ombudsman seems to be a myth. The central bank governor and the Minister of Finance don't seem to understand whose responsibility it is to protect depositors and customers from ridiculous fees run amok. So the Progressive Empowerment Party will. We are engaging this conversation with the public, hoping to get the banks and those in government presently to do their jobs. If not, an election is around the corner. Vote the Progressive Empowerment Party into office, and we will ensure that while the banks are free to make all the profits they want, they will do so servicing and respecting the customers, paying interest on depositors' funds that they use to generate interest for themselves through lending credit, and not have to rely on advantageous fees, leaking funds from customers' accounts.
What do you call it when a bunch of companies collude to set prices, fix markets, close off competition, capture regulators, and bribe politicians?
Another issue contributing to this lack of respect and service is the closed-off nature of our financial services sector and the lack of real competition among the banks. The Progressive Empowerment Party also advocates for an open market where banking and financial services are concerned. We would create an environment that invites international competition to help bring new, vibrant stimulation into the economy, creating an environment where all banks now have to compete for depositors' funds, creating the environment that we're looking for. I am Philip Edward Alexander, and this has been 3 minutes to a better Trinidad and Tobago.
Antel is Trinidad's most reliable and technically experienced ICT company, providers of quality structured cabling, Cat6 data fiber and power cables. We also stock cabling infrastructure basket-type cable trays for server rooms and data centers. Antel also installs and maintains video security systems including cameras, alarms and electronic entrance locks for businesses and residential properties. Call Antel 674-1406 or 783-9250.
We're back for the last segment of our program this morning. Those 2 hours really flew. We are taking calls if you would like to call in and speak to us, ask some questions, make comments on what you heard today. The number is 347-4737. This is just the wrap-up segment. We have just under 20 minutes. And we spoke a lot this morning, Michelle, about just the state of the economy. We opened with the global situation that is facing us right now with the coronavirus pandemic, as it is being called, because it is spreading across the globe, and that's what a pandemic is. And the falling of the oil and gas price, well, the oil prices, crude oil now, Brent crude oil. across the globe because of the tensions between Russia and Saudi Arabia and how it has trickled down and is impacting us. And we did discuss it from the angle of, you know, our economy that was already limping along and now faces this double whammy that is about to hit us. And in terms of that, I did want to touch a little bit on PEP policies for the nation with regards to that and just our ideas for diversifying. I mean, Michelle would have mentioned
A few.
shipping turnaround,
Correct.
etc., agriculture. Can you imagine if we were really exporting our produce outside of Trinidad in terms of the mangoes and the avocados,
Right.
where we would be?
Breadfruit. Philip speaks of breadfruit. Some as
Breadfruit.
limes that grow very easily, low maintenance. That's a high product in the States. They,
Yeah.
you know, it's those items are, we're literally talking US billions.
Yeah.
And at the Progressive Empowerment Party, we have always spoke of solutions to our current problems. We've always spoke of extending to maritime industry, shipbuilding, dry docking. Currently, you know, I worked for the cruise lines, as you know, and Bahamas does extensive dry docking for all of the major cruise lines. Can you imagine? I'm talking billions a year. Each ship is literally spends $2, $3, $4 million in 2-3 weeks. That alone, dry docking alone, is an avenue alone we can make millions. Industries that are labor intensive. I was just, you know, I called my bank. When you call Scotiabank, you get a call center in Jamaica.
Really?
Yes, you get a call center in Jamaica. There's how they're basically it's Jamaica and Dominican Republic, I heard.
Okay.
So why can't those call centers be here? Why can't those call centers be for IBM and Apple and so forth? Why can't Trinidad facilitate that type of employment? And the reason I bring up something like that, because we have to look at jobs as all for the nation.
Yes.
We can't look at the doctors, the lawyers. We have to look at the average person. My first job during college was a call center.
Really?
Answering the phone in the cruise line industry. And I literally worked my way up. Hence the reason I am in support of industries such as that. What about Nike apparel? You know, China's becoming an issue. Labor-intensive
Yes.
industries that we would be more cost efficient for Nike to send their part of their manufacturing here.
Yeah.
That's what we mean, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. We mean industries that are easily accessible. We've talked about agriculture. We have talked about, you know, expanding outside of technology. What about technology? You know, our policy on clean energy and
Yes.
renewable energy. There, right now, that industry is employing 11 million people globally.
And it's going to boom, and it is projected to
booming.
boom now that oil and gas is on the decline. And I mean,
Correct.
we see this happening. If you look at the graphs and charts in oil and gas, it keeps going up and down, but as much as it goes up and down, every time it goes up, it's always by small increments. We've never
Right.
seen, at least as far as I know, we haven't seen $100 barrel oil
No.
in a couple of years, and it's
Right.
not really projected to go back as more and more sources of energy are found, renewable energy, turbine energy,
Right.
Toku.
Tidal
People have been
generators.
talking-
Oh,
listen,
yes,
we have
my
been
arrow.
talking for years
Yes.
about the wind energy that we can harness. I was actually told that we can power the entire Leeward Islands or going up the islands. We have
Right.
enough energy coming from
Those
waves and the
North
wind
Coast
and the North
areas,
Coast
correct.
that can power Trinidad to the point that we can sell to other nations. And yet again, we're not taking advantage of this because the countries that are willing to invest and you know, bring this kind of technology for us are countries like Holland and countries that are
Correct.
not dealing with corruption, but we're
Correct.
going to Ghana for yams. And again, it's not a joke, because the reality is
Right.
we are not progressing because we're not making progressive decisions as a country, as a nation.
We're not thinking progressively.
We
I
are.
mean, we don't even have to go to Europe. Right now, Costa Rica, I believe, is operating over 90% off of renewable energy.
Yeah.
So why are we not going to our neighbors? When Costa Rica is a few hours away, why are we not seeking Antigua? Antigua has some of the most world-renowned water desalination policies and water management. Antigua,
Yes.
less than 2 hours away. Why are we not thinking that? And when we speak of renewable energy, we're speaking of jobs for our citizens.
We are.
All of those that lost their jobs in the oil and gas, we could have easily trained them to renewable energy. Currently, worldwide, there are oil refineries being converted to renewable energy plants. Why didn't we think that with Petrotrin? Why are we investing in Petrotrin when we know oil continues to be on the decline?
Success leaves clues, and there are clues all across the globe. We have ambassadors to almost every country or every continent on this planet. Yet, what are they bringing back to the nation? Or is it just an ambassadorship where we pay for your housing and your allowance and you go and you stunt yourself abroad? As far as I know, you're supposed to be able to go out there and work for the nation. And should a Progressive Empowerment Party government get into office, that is what you would do if you got an ambassadorship. You're out there to work for the people. Your job is to bring technology and ideas and foreign direct investment into this country, because that's what we need. We don't need loans, and we don't need to import, and we don't need to make connections and partnerships with countries that are known to be dealing with corrupt and illicit practices. We need real progressive development ideas for this nation to take us forward, to take us out of this rut, to help us overcome the tough times that we are facing, not just as a country but as a global economy. That's what we need.
And it's about to get worse, which is so saddening. And as you mentioned, the ambassadors, the exchanging of ideas, the dialogue to get this country forward. Where is it? Where do we see the value of those working abroad for this country? Where do we see it? What idea? I mean, you simply go on Google right now. I pulled up a PDF document from the state of Colorado, and it had their entire water management system. So it didn't cost us anything. All you need to download it. Literally, you can download it, and it had their entire water management system that works 24/7. And you wonder, what are those doing in power? As we say, I call it deliberate incompetency, as you know. They are deliberately not sharing knowledge, so as a nation we remain stagnant and we remain where we are.
We do. And I mean, we're speaking progressive ideas, but there's also the angle where we have to empower people, and it's not by accident that we have this name, Progressive Empowerment Party, because it is where we see ourselves, or where we would like to take the nation. We would like to bring all of the progressive ideas that you can see across the globe. That when Scotland made sanitary napkins and feminine products free for all, that to me was the biggest, I have to say, the most impacting scenario that could point out a progressive nation for me. And I would love to see Trinidad and Tobago go there. But there's also the empowerment part, where we want to empower our people. We want to make our people feel like they have hope, like they have some stake in this land. And I mean, we were talking about East Port of Spain and that article by Selwyn Cujo, and I'm thinking about our policy on education.
I was just thinking that.
And I mean, the fact that we have failing schools and failed schools and underperforming schools versus prestige schools, both of which are taught the same curriculum, can tell you that something is wrong with our education system. And the plan that we have to zone schools and make all schools 10-year schools, and not just do that, but we need to figure out and do an investigation into why the prestige schools, which is being taught the same curriculum as the underperforming schools.
Right.
Why is that happening? And I mean,
What is
just-
the difference?
What is the difference? And just
Right.
looking at or reading about the conditions in East Port of Spain and, for example, the Southeast Secondary School, you can clearly understand that one of the differences that they have is the area that you're located in, and it's high time maybe that school be relocated. Not even maybe. If you're
Correct.
in a crime
Yes.
infested zone, it has to be relocated.
Right.
Or you deal with crime in the area. You deal with the fact that there is gang warfare happening in the area, and what is the cause of gang warfare? In the area? Which is
Exactly.
turf
You
war.
you
And-
right. You research it. You deep dive it. You see the issues. I mean, education is so important in addressing that as a nation,
It is.
because this is the core of our youths. If they're not getting proper education, we will have angry youths. Angry youths leads to what? Crime. Leads to anger within the society as a whole. And until we understand that and understand that we deserve that, we're not going to solve our issues until we understand that the Ministry of Social Development needs to work in these areas and find the key root causes of the issues these people are subjected to and better enhance their living. And at the Progressive Empowerment Party, we always state home ownership.
Yeah.
We state home ownership as a solution to solving crime. Why do we do that? Because if you own a home, it is proven you will take pride in your community.
You have a stake in your community. No,
Correct.
you're not going to let some drug lord come and set up shop 2 buildings down from you because you have a stake in this community. You have a family to
Correct.
raise in this community. You're not going to let that happen.
Correct.
And that home ownership policy that we have in terms of reducing crime in the
Correct.
area, in terms of giving people some kind of stake in the land and opportunity, those are the things that you should be getting when you say I voting for a man who look like me, because you would expect when you're voting black
Exactly.
that he will do something for you. And if you realize that by voting race and party you're not getting this, then it's time to vote on something tangible.
Exactly.
Vote on your future. Vote on the future of your children. Because that for me is what has been lacking for all of these years. We're voting so blindly that when election day done, you have no idea what you vote for.
Exactly.
And I've been guilty of this. The last election, general election that I voted for, I didn't even know what Stuart Young looked like. I
Right.
just know I was raised in a P&M
Correct.
household, and I was too young at the time to understand. I don't want to say I was too young. I was not informed as I was now. And people, as much as we were taught one thing and we were brought up a certain way, information is really key, and especially if you have access to that information, don't take it for granted. Research, look at what happens outside as compared to what happens inside, and don't just look to America. Look at what's happening globally and up the islands and countries like
Correct.
Jamaica that we used to be
Right.
laughing at, that's now progressing and
Correct,
advancing.
and exceeded us. I mean, in terms of one of our policies is prison reform. And, we will have delinquents in our society. We're not saying we can, abolish crime and it's going to go away. But what the Progressive Empowerment Party addresses is an approach to that and fixing those that do get into that system.
Yes.
Conflict management available, education available, counseling while you are in prison. This is extremely critical that these men and women are rehabilitated, so when they come back to society, we, the innocent victims, are not victims of them.
Yes.
It's a holistic approach, and until we start to think all these policies, I think Akil says it best, all of our policies are
Work together.
interrelated
Yes.
to fix the country holistically. And I challenge citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, elections are coming around. When they come knocking to your door, ask them, what are your policies to fix this nation?
And if they can't tell you, and if they can't explain it simply, then they don't have one, and they have no real plan
Correct.
or solution. And you can't just hear we're going to fix crime. They need to tell you how
How.
they plan to fix
Right.
it. They need to tell you where and how they're going to go about, especially for your community. And if you live in an at-risk community, or what they call hotspots or hot zones,
Right.
you need to ask these questions of your parliamentarians, and you need to also assess them on the past 5 and 10 years that they have been in office, because it's not enough to look like you, and it's not enough to wear a red or yellow t-shirt and tell you that, you know, your parents descend from a line of great
Right.
people in the UNC or the PM. It's not enough to do that when you look at your circumstances, and you look at the circumstances of the generations before you, and you see that nothing has progressed. The world is moving forward, people. The world is advancing. We
Exactly.
can't continue to stay back. We will be left behind eventually.
We are being left behind, and I mean,
Are
it's so
being.
sad. I mean, we take the region. We look at Jamaica, we look at Barbados, and we see they have overcome the same obstacles that we are facing. So when we say, when the Progressive Empowerment Party says there are solutions, there are solutions. Jamaica had dealt, we all know that, in the 80s dealt with an astronomical amount of crime. And drugs and everything, and they have been able to overcome that by simply implementing first world practices, engaging other countries to assist them. We look at Barbados, which is less than 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
They can assist them in our tourism endeavors. We are one community as a region, but again, we're not utilizing just the community to assist us in going forward as a nation. And again, we have to start thinking progressively.
We do, and we have to start thinking about the future and our children's future, because as it is right now, the only thing that we're leaving for our children and our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, is just a mountain load of debt. That's all we're leaving for them right now, loans that they may not be able to repay, given, you know, if the world's economy is supposed to go, well, spiral downward as it is right now. There are loans that we may probably never be able to repay,
right.
but, and worse yet, loans that we have taken out that we can't show anything for, that we can't see. I mean, we took a tourism development loan, but where are we in terms of tourism and the scale of tourism in the world right now? Where are we? I remember going to the is it the, not the Wildfowl Trust, it's the Eco, oh gosh, I forgot the name.
Right.
How could I forget the
Right.
name? But it's one of those eco, it's not a park, but it's it's completely slipping me right now, but it was like years and years ago. But I remember going there and thinking, oh my God, we have such a beautiful country. Every time I go to Tobago, every time I go, I visit some beach, secluded beach, not the ones that like Maracas that we take and destroy and mash up.
Right.
I'm talking about
Just,
untouched beaches in Trinidad and Tobago. I think of how absolutely beautiful this nation is, and I think of how much money we should be earning in tourism, and then I think about those 41 people sitting down in parliament whose interest clearly is not on developing tourism, and it's not on developing the nation to a point where we can export that
Exactly.
to the world.
Right. And tourism, I mean, it's not going to have the benefit to high financiers, because tourism presents a lot of employment in terms of the average man. You know, the coconut vendor, literally you could make thousands US, because people are getting off ships, people are flying and paying in US. This would solve our cash flow problem. But again, we look at why are we not, and you know, my mother had said that, you know, Trinidad had so much oil, we thought we were better. So, you know, we never looked at tourism as an option, but now look where we are.
We actually have to rely on tourism now, and if you look, I mean, places like, what is the number one? I think the number one tourist destination in the world right now is it New York or is it Paris? One of the two. And I remember when I went to New York, there's so many, you know, those I love New York keychains. New York, when you look at it, I mean, these buildings behind is like nothing
Right.
compared to when you walk in New York. Some of their smallest buildings are still bigger
Right.
than ours. Yet tourism is so big
So
there.
big.
People come to New York
Yes.
just to say I took a picture
Correct.
by the Empire State
Correct.
Building, or just to say that I went to Central Park, and that's tourism there. That alone boosts the New
Oh,
York economy in the billions of dollars.
And we look to New York. Look at New York and crime. We take the statistics. New York has less crime per year than Trinidad. So we had 500 plus. New York had, less than 500 basically.
And their population
And they're
is what, over
8.1 million. These are things we need to start looking at as citizens,
Yeah.
and say, well, New York 8.1, less than 500. Trinidad 1.4, over 500. These are statistics that are available to you for you to see we are doing something wrong.
Like I said, success leaves clues. It is 8 a.m. on the dot.
Okay.
And that brings an end to a very informative show. Michelle, thank you so much for
Oh,
coming
thank
here
you
today.
for having
Really,
me. Always a joy.
really enjoyed this conversation, not just from talking about what is wrong, but also talking about how it can be right.
correct.
It's time that we move forward as a nation. It's time that we see that we deserve so much better. And not just that we deserve better, but there are ways to get better. Success leaves clues. I want to leave you with that. Go research, go look at countries that are thriving, that are making money, that are still going to survive, and even though we have this economic downturn facing the globe, and you would see that Trinidad should be and could be so much further along. Thank you for joining us today on Pep Talks in the Morning. I will see you again on Thursday. Stay safe. Trinidad and Tobago is in a crisis. For far too long, our people have been abused and silenced by our politicians and the business elite.
Just look around you. People are losing their jobs. Crime is at an all-time high. Our justice, education, and health systems have failed.
We all know the truth behind all that is wrong in our country. Corruption is destroying us. Billions of our dollars are being looted by a small group of business people that use our politicians to divide and distract us,
so they can take what they want, leaving us with no hope for a better country.
All of this is because we've never had leaders who seek the interests of the citizenry as their first priority.
I am here because I'm not taking it anymore.
I am here because I am not taking it anymore.
I am fed up of politics as it is in Trinidad and Tobago.
It is time we elect leaders with the backbone and the love of our people to go after the corrupt, evil elements in our country, hell-bent on serving their own pockets while we suffer.
And it is time that we as a nation take a collective stand against wrongdoing.
So we are making a plea to the nation to rally behind us.
Because our freedom of speech is being threatened by those who don't want us speaking out on these issues.
A man that I greatly respect is one of those leaders fighting for a better country. His name is Philip Edward Alexander, and he has bravely challenged the people and institutions that are destroying our nation.
To date, he has been threatened with 5 lawsuits for having the courage to ask state agency UDCOT on why the renovations of the President's house cost $89 million.
When experts in the field have estimated that job should have never crossed 20 million.
Where did the rest of our money go?
We refuse to stand by and allow any agency to use our courts to try and silence and punish Philip or any other citizen of our country for trying to seek the truth. If you're fed up of corruption and want to be a part of real change, support Philip and the Progressive Empowerment Party in this fight.
This fight is not for him or us to bear alone.
It is a fight for you, our loved ones, and our friends.
It is a fight for the future of our country.
You can help by making a contribution to Philip's legal fees and help him and PEP expose the truth and shine light over the darkness of corruption. Go to our website at peptt.com, click on donate and see all the ways you can pitch in.
There is hope. Our country can be saved, but we all need to stand together. My name is Felicia Holder.
chairman of the Progressive Empowerment Party, and I support Philip Edward Alexander and the PEP.
I support Philip Edward Alexander and the PEP.
I support Philip Edward Alexander and the PEP.
I support.
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 I support Philip Edward Alexander and the PEP.